Inspirational Creatives, episode 183.
Hi there, it's Robert Lawrence here. We're going to do this great tape. It's coming to the end of 1986, so I'm going to put some good songs on here.
Welcome to Inspirational Creatives. I'm your host, Rob Lawrence. Join me every Friday as I chat with successful artists, producers, and creative entrepreneurs who share powerful stories and strategies. They can help you to create the life that you want. Listen each week as these inspirational creatives show you how to take your creativity to the next level. You'll learn how to create a sustainable business that inspires others and gives you the financial freedom and lifestyle that you want. Thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe in iTunes and sign up at inspirationalcreatives.com to get free exclusive bonus material. And now, on with the show. Rob here, and welcome to the very last episode of Inspirational Creatives for 2016. It seems that some 30 years ago, I was still interested in recording and making my own tapes, and who would have known that today I'm reaching a global audience through podcasting? Well, that's just the power of podcasting, and if it's something that you would love to do, I would love to help you. In the new year, I will be launching a new program to teach you how to launch your own podcast. So if that's something that interests you, just drop me a line at rob@inspirationalcreatives.com and I can send you some more information. As it's the end of the year, I've been giving this episode some serious thought, recognizing that many people who wish to live a more creative life are feeling stressed and overwhelmed. I wanted to help ease you into 2017 with this episode, which introduces you to the topics of simplicity and minimalism. Given now that Inspirational Creatives has reached almost over 50,000 downloads, I wanted to go right back to the beginning to share with you what I believe is a very important episode. Recognizing that when I had this conversation, the podcast was very young and therefore the audience was relatively small, I felt it was such an important conversation, I wanted to replay this episode for you. Of course, if you're new to Inspirational Creatives, this will be the first time you've heard it. But if you have heard this conversation before, I'm sure if you listen to it again, you're going to get some new insights and ideas, just as I have listening to it again. I believe that one of the ways that we can reduce overwhelm, stress, and distraction in our lives is by simplifying. So I can't wait to share this episode again with you. I'd like to thank my friend Minna for introducing me to today's guest way back when. And since having this conversation, his name may be one that's familiar to you. So with no further ado, let's wind back time to episode 5, where I had a chat with simplicity expert and becoming minimalist blogger, Joshua Becker. Rob Lawrence here, and welcome to another episode of Inspirational Creatives. Today, I'm extremely excited and delighted to introduce to you the inspirational Joshua Becker. Since discovering minimalism 5 years ago, Joshua has inspired many others to find more purpose and life by owning fewer possessions. Today, as one of the leading voices in the modern simplicity movement, he is the founder and editor of Becoming Minimalist, a website designed to inspire others to pursue their greatest passions through owning fewer possessions. Joshua reaches 350,000 readers each month. He is the best-selling author of Simplify and Clutter-Free with Kids. His story has appeared in the Wall Street Journal, the Boston Globe, the Guardian, Time Magazine, and the CBS Evening News. He lives in Phoenix, Arizona, with his wife and 2 young kids, and it gives me great pleasure today to have Joshua Becker here to share his story and philosophy with you. Joshua, welcome.
Wow, thank you so much for having me. It is my pleasure to be here speaking with you.
Thanks so much. Is there anything you would like to add to that introduction to gain a sense of who you are?
Oh, no, I think you did a pretty good job. I tend to think of myself as pretty ordinary, but trying to do the best I can to make a small difference in the world. I'd
like to begin at the beginning and ask you about your childhood, if I may. What creative experiences do you remember vividly?
Yeah, as far as my home environment, my childhood growing up, I'm super thankful. I have my family's very loving, very stable. I have a twin brother and I have a sister who's 1 year younger. So 3 of us, all pretty close in age. I loved sports growing up is probably the thing that I did the most, just with my brother and with some friends down the street. As far as creative outlets, I can remember always enjoying writing. I remember being really young and writing a book about an elephant. I never loved it so much that I knew I was going to do it when I got older.
Yeah.
But now that I'm doing it, I can look back and certainly see some hints of me trending that way even as a child.
Yeah. Have you always maintained a passion for writing?
No, I didn't. As a matter of fact, I did fine writing. I mean, I could write my papers in college and spit them out pretty quickly. But I would say I never even thought that I would be doing it for a living. Like a lot of people, I had a dream of writing a book at some point, but I never thought it would become what it is today. And I typically say this: the thing for me that makes writing far more enjoyable than it ever was before is having people read it.
Yeah.
Just knowing that what I was writing was being read by other people was very helpful to me and helpful for my productivity as well.
Obviously, your writings come through now to this wonderful blog that you've got. Can you take us back to that beautiful spring Saturday, that Memorial Day in Vermont, when you woke up determined to clean your garage, and then what happened?
Yeah, the short background is I was living a pretty typical suburban life, paycheck to paycheck, pay increases and job promotions, and still never able to get ahead because I was just spending all my money on getting a bigger house and nicer cars and more things inside my house, whether it be in the closets or in the drawers in the rooms. But yeah, it was a Saturday morning. I was cleaning my garage, and my 5-year-old son was playing alone in the backyard while I was tackling this project. I had pulled everything out into the driveway to organize it nicely and return it back after I was living in Vermont at the time, after the long Vermont winter. My neighbor was outside kind of doing her landscaping and for taking her hours as well. And so we just struck up a short conversation about how much effort and energy was going into taking care of our homes. And she's the first one that introduced me to minimalism. She said, yeah, that's why my daughter's a minimalist. She keeps telling me I don't need to own this much stuff.
Right.
And I just remember looking back at my house and seeing this pile of dirty, dusty possessions piled high in my driveway, and knowing full well that my possessions weren't making me happy. I wasn't looking for happiness in my possessions, but as I saw the pile of things that I'd spent all morning cleaning, and I saw out of the corner of my eye my son alone in the backyard where he'd been all morning, just this realization that not only were my possessions not making me happy, but they were actually distracting me. They were actually taking me away from the very things that did bring me happiness and purpose and fulfillment to my life. And so that was the moment that started the journey of, man, let's just get down to owning less stuff so that we can spend more time and energy and money on the things that mean the most to us.
You had this aha moment by the sounds of things. And then is this something that happened gradually for you?
I would say that my mind changed very early on. Just the juxtaposition was very, very real to me of how much of my life and energy was being swallowed up by things, by possessions. And so the decision to own less happened right away.
Right.
The actual process took months, in some cases even years, to get to some of the rooms in our house, I should say. But the mindset change happened right away, and it was just further entrenched. I became more and more passionate about it as we got rid of more and more things, began noticing some of the benefits of owning less.
And how did you convince your family? Because obviously this is quite a big change and it involves them too.
Yeah, my wife was very much on board, as a matter of fact. If I'd been cleaning the garage all morning, she'd been cleaning the inside of the house.
Yeah.
And we had a 2-year-old daughter at the time. So, she had the same thing going on. And so when I said, hey, maybe we should own less stuff, she was on board. If I wanted to get rid of 80% of our stuff, she probably wanted to get rid of 50 or 60% of our stuff. So, the first couple of sweeps through the house went pretty well. And I wanted to keep getting rid of more. And she's like, whoa. I think we're at a good point here. So, that became the conversation then, the compromise then, and how's this going to work out for our family. And my 5-year-old son, he was okay with it too. I tell parents, don't start with your kids' stuff. You start with your own stuff, go through your own closet, go through your own drawers, get rid of your things first, and help your kids see that and explain to them why you're doing it. And then when it's time to get to their room and get to their toys and their clothes, they're going to be in a far better place to handle those questions than if you start with getting rid of their stuff first.
Yeah, I guess to some degree, you have to set an example.
Yeah, for sure. And explain it. I think a lot of times parents don't do a great job of explaining to their kids why they're making the decisions that they're making. So I always encourage that.
Yeah, I know. I imagine at first it's pretty hard to let go of some stuff. Were there any big challenges for you? Were there any things that you were kind of like really reluctant to let go, but kind of knew that you had to let go of?
Right. So most people, when we have this conversation about owning less, they immediately run to the hardest things that they would have to get rid of, the
Right.
sentimental items or the books, the passion projects, their hobbies. And I always say, don't run there first. Just start with the things that you can part with, the things that won't be difficult to remove from your home. And as you do, be noticing how it's changing your environment and how it's changing your focus and changing intentionality in life. And as you notice a lot of those benefits, then when you get to the harder things, the passion projects and the sentimental items, you'll be far more equipped to answer those questions. You'll be prepared to do it. You'll be ready to do it, and you'll know what to keep and you'll know what to get rid of.
I really like that. So in many respects, even though it's quite a significant mindset change, it doesn't have to be an overnight thing. This is something you can kind of start small and start to cultivate, I suppose, different habits and approaches and systems and processes to start tackling stuff.
Yeah, and I think there's other benefits to, well, number one, mostly just out of necessity. It has to take some time. Most of us don't have a lot of extra hours lying around where we can start investing the time into getting rid of things. But more than that, it's a inward journey. It's an inward process of starting to challenge some of the assumptions that we made in life and starting to sort out maybe some of the lies that we believed from society for so long. And that can be difficult and painful to have those emerge as we're going through the process. But I think that the self-exploration of removing possessions is just as helpful as actually removing the things.
I have to say that the whole concept of a minimalist lifestyle is new for me. Just the thought of it is actually really quite liberating. How does it feel for you?
Typically, your response is the response that most people have. As a matter of fact, when I go to speak on this topic, I'll usually begin by saying, I don't think I'm going to tell you anything new. I think I'm just going to remind you of some things that you already know to be true. That we own too much stuff, that we're wasting too much of our lives chasing material possessions. And if we could remove that pursuit, our lives would improve in amazing ways. And in that way, I feel a lot of what I'm doing is just reminding people of this truth, or maybe it's giving them permission to follow that life that they've always wanted to follow, to live the life they've always wanted to live. And so in that way, it's very encouraging for me. I mean, every time I have this conversation and someone like you says, man, what you're saying is very appealing to me. It makes sense to me. I find a lot of satisfaction out of that, and probably one of the reasons that I love doing it so much.
So what does simple living and being a minimalist mean to you?
For me, I define it. Here's how I define minimalism. Minimalism is the intentional promotion of the things I most value and the removal of anything that distracts me from it.
Okay.
A lot of people hear minimalism and images pop in their mind of bare cupboards and empty walls and everything white,
Okay, yeah.
And I say that's a pretty stark way to view minimalism. And minimalism is always going to look different to different people. Minimalism is ultimately about removing the things that we don't need so that we can have more opportunity to pursue the things that we want our life to be about.
Yeah, I love that. To me, it says we've only got so much time and we've only got so much focus. And by removing the stuff that distracts us, like clutter, and that can be clutter in many forms, I imagine, we're able to kind of focus our energy on the things that really matter and the things that we find that add the most value to our lives.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, by definition, all of our resources are finite.
Right.
Money, time, energy, attention, creativity, I suppose you could say, at least time to be creative. All those things have an ending point. There's a finite amount. And the more that we're directing towards things that aren't adding value to our life, the less we have to pursue the things that really do add add this value and fulfillment that we're all chasing.
I'd really like to come back to that about the fulfillment, but I just want to ask first why you think we own so much stuff.
Sure. Lots of reasons to that. I probably boil it down to, I don't know if I'm in a majority with this view or not, but that if you look back over history, it seems to be that humanity tends to have a greedy, a selfish disposition. What is war other than people who want more for themselves? And so history seems to say that we have this greed and selfishness inside of us. And so then society, advertisements, marketing, businesses, the world that we're living just feed into that with their advertisements. And we also have this, ingrained desire for pleasure and for happiness. And so all these 5,000 advertisements we see every single day, and they're all promising that they'll fulfill this happiness and this pleasure if we buy whatever it is that they're selling. And as much as we want to say the ads don't influence us, they do. And we begin to believe what they're saying far more than we realize.
And it seems to be an endless chase when you start buying stuff and upgrading stuff and replacing stuff. It seems to be an endless chase in many respects.
Right, because if we think that the new iPhone or a bigger television or a bigger house, nicer car, like we all think that those things are going to provide that happiness and fulfillment, we get it and we realize that it hasn't really changed us that much. And so our response tends to be, oh, I just need a bigger house. I need more money in my savings account. I need the faster computer. If I get this and that, then I'll finally find that happiness and fulfillment, as opposed to saying, wait, I think I'm chasing it all in the wrong places.
So chasing fulfillment in all the wrong places. I certainly know that when I'm more productive, I feel a greater sense of fulfillment. Could you talk to me a little bit about how a simplicity mindset helps you to be more productive?
Sure. I'll start by saying this. One of the things about the greatest thing about minimalism isn't that you're removing possessions, it's that you're able to fill your life with new things. Minimalism ultimately is about the things you're adding to your life because of the things that you are subtracting. And as we remove possessions, we're able to fill the gaps in with other things. And so some people travel, some people retire early, some people, spend more time on experiences and build a bigger savings account, right? Like there's any number of things that we can start to pursue fulfillment in rather than material possessions. And I'm not sure we find that right away. It's not, oh, the very next thing I chase is the thing that's going to add fulfillment into my life, but at least it opens up the opportunity to start chasing it somewhere other than material possessions. And so number one, we're just opened up to the idea of looking for fulfillment elsewhere. And as we begin finding it, then I think we are naturally drawn to being more productive there. And if we're finding fulfillment in our writing, in our creative outlets, in the community service that we're doing, as we begin tasting more and more fulfillment and happiness there, then we naturally begin spending more resources and more time pursuing our fulfillment and happiness there.
The way you're describing it there, it's very much an inward journey. It's a journey of mindfulness in many respects and awareness and shifting attention back to things that truly fulfill us, which tend to be activities and experiences and maybe collaborations with others. One of the more common challenges I find with friends of mine and colleagues is our ability to get stuck and immobilized. And I do wonder how a life of minimalism might help us to overcome those sorts of challenges. Have you got any advice or thoughts you can give along those lines?
Yeah, you use some words there, mindfulness and such. I think that one of the greatest benefits of minimalism is intentionality, which is probably just a synonym for a lot of the words that you use. That I'm going to be very intentional about where I'm spending my time and where I'm spending my resources. And then as we become more intentional about that, and as we remove some of the fruitless pursuits, there's always going to be the stuck times. I think depending on how you want to define that. I mean, I certainly go through times where I'm more creative than others, and certain times where where I can say, okay, I need to rest for a little while. I need some personal soul care. I need to care for myself in this moment so that I can come back and be more refreshed and be stronger. But minimalism just removes such a drain, all the time that we spend, chasing things and desiring things and pursuing things and buying them and shopping, and caring for them. If we remove that chunk, then we're able to better use, I think, those down times, those stuck times. We don't fall back into the same rat race of chasing the things that aren't actually providing value for us or for others.
I think we do use a lot of energy. I heard this term, shiny object syndrome, and we get distracted by all of these things that, in some respects, the distractions are so powerful that we get consumed by them. And then, certainly for me personally, over a period of time, I kind of unbolt things again and go, wow, I've been heavily distracted by these things.
Yes, that's good. Shiny object syndrome. That's a good way to say. And I think minimalism doesn't cure, all the ills of society. I typically say owning less is great, but wanting less is even better. And so as we kind of remove that syndrome, or at least we become more aware when we're running down that road, then we're easier to navigate back to things that are more worthwhile.
I noticed on your blog you talk about being a rational minimalist, and you were saying there about owning less. It doesn't mean about owning nothing. It simply means about owning less. And if we do have possessions, ones that we really care about, ones that bring us more joy.
Yeah. There's a term that someone actually used about me. Someone else had used the term first. We love our neighborhood. We love being involved in our community. We have a group of people that meet at our house every week. Our kids are having their friends over. And so I'd read stories about people traveling the world and giving up everything and running off there. And I was like, I that never sounded attractive to me, because we liked where we were and the way that we were involved with people. And so minimalism became, okay, what do I need to keep to accomplish what I want to accomplish, and what's just taking me away from it? It came to this very thoughtful pursuit. And so it was early on, someone had linked to my blog and just said, I really like this guy's idea of minimalism. It seems so rational to me. I'm like, yes, that's a phrase I like. It's thoughtful. It requires strategy and intentionality and thinking, what am I going to keep and what am I going to get rid of? And then that's going to look different for each of us.
And I think what I like about that term for myself is that it implies a process of thoughtfulness and consideration. So it's not just like clearing everything out into a skip. It's about really thinking things through and reevaluating, but with some criteria.
Yeah, and it forces questions of values. It forces questions of passion and purpose. And I think that's a valuable thing for all of us.
You mentioned values there, a point I'm really interested to ask you about. I saw a really inspiring quote on the Becoming Minimalist Facebook page, and it said, if you don't fit in, you're probably doing the right thing. And you were talking there about how much you love your local neighborhood and your community. And I know that when you have a really strong tie with friends or people that you work with, or any community sort of shape or form, it's usually because you share very strong values. How do you pursue the cultivation of a more simple life without threatening relationships with others?
Yeah, no, it does. I have never, and you're not asking this question, so but let me start with this way. I have never purposefully given up on a relationship with someone else because of my pursuit of minimalism. We should love people, not things. And, some people are, give up the things that weigh you down and give up all the people that weigh you down. And certainly there's, a place for boundaries and evaluating our relationships. But people deserve far more patience than things do. And so I try to always shape minimalism in a non-judgmental form, in a way that's always, hey, we just, stopped buying stuff because we're doing this with it instead. And we've been thinking through some of these things. And so I've actually had very few, I can't think of any friend, any family member, any close relationship of a person who no longer wants anything to do with me because I've decided to pursue minimalism. And I think some of that is maybe the crowd that I was with before wasn't overly materialistic, that they would feel offended and judged by my lifestyle choice. But I think there's another piece of just the way we present ourselves, that I'm not doing it out of pride. I'm not doing it in a way that I see that I'm better than someone else. I know full well that I struggle with things and temptations that they probably don't struggle with. This is just, the thing that I've been learning and the road that I've been pursuing. And so keeping that in mind, I think helps to keep a lot of those relationships intact. And I don't have a lot of guy friends that go to the mall, but if my wife's friends were all going to go to the mall, she'd go with them. She just wouldn't buy anything. She'd go and still spend time with them. She just wouldn't be buying the stuff that they are.
So in many respects, that quote, if you don't fit in, you're probably doing the right thing, is more about thoughtfulness, applying some thoughtfulness to advertising, for example. Yeah,
sure. I tend to write a lot about consumerism and society and how most of our economies are built on this idea of consumerism and buying more and more stuff. And so if we're rejecting some of those notions, then I think that's helpful for us and that's beneficial for us. And, there's certainly a sense of, obviously the quote can't be applied to every decision that we make in life, but there's a lot of mob tendencies and a crowd of people and crowd think, where a crowd starts running some ways and it kind of builds on each other, as opposed to just taking a stand against some of those things and taking unpopular opinions and being okay with that.
Yeah. Would you say it's a way of life?
I think it is a intentionally pursued and applied worldview.
I like that.
How about that? And that's the first time I've used that phrasing, but it's a worldview that says there are more important things than owning a lot of stuff. And so I am going to purposefully and intentionally pursue whatever those things are, knowing that I'm going to be not giving up, but knowing that I'm not going to be pursuing the things that a lot of our culture is pursuing instead.
Yeah. And I like that approach to an alternative worldview and trying to see things differently in a more positive and empowering way. Something I really wanted to ask you about, and I think it was something I saw in one of your newsletters, when you were talking about the concept of promoting people past us and developing a mindset which achieves a sense of fulfillment that comes with fulfilling the ambitions of others.
Yeah, the quickest way to succeed is to help someone else find their success. And this takes a two-pronged approach, maybe two different views of life that come together. And probably the first place I saw this was in relation to blogging, was in relation to building a following on a website or whatever it may be. And I discovered that the more I promoted other people, the more I, sent out links to other people. Because at first I was writing about minimalism and, there were other people writing about it. And I was always so nervous about linking out to their website because I thought what they were writing was so much better than what I was writing. I'm like, oh man, if I link to that podcast, if I talk about that writer, then the people reading my stuff are never going to come back to me and they're just going to follow that other guy, that other gal instead. And I found just the opposite to be true. I found the more that I sent people to helpful resources, the more they came back to me because they knew that I was referring them to helpful places and I was introducing them to people that were going to help them. And so in that way, I found that me helping other people succeed and me encouraging other people actually drew more people to me because of that. And if you help someone reach their goals, if you legitimately help someone reach their goals, rarely do they forget that you help them reach their goals. I mean, they remember, there's a few jerks probably that, never come back to you, but most people are so thankful for what you did for them and they want to help you down the road. So that's a piece of it. And then there's just a piece of, so much of the competition, so much of the wanting to be better than anyone else and have more followers and have more of an influence. So much of that is money related. If I'm able to remove the pursuit of material possessions from my life, then, and now the greatest goal in life isn't even to make a lot of money, but it's to make a difference and it's to find significance and to help other people. And so when that competition for money is removed, then there's a whole nother world that's opened up to all of us.
Yeah, I really like that. I mean, for me, that's a really refreshing thing to hear. Obviously, money is still there and money's still important in many respects. But how do you feel your attitudes towards money have changed?
Yeah, and I should start with, obviously, money is just a form of trade, right? I mean, we need money to survive, and obviously we need to be working hard and prepare and providing for our families, and that ought to be our first pursuit. But for me, what I'm finding is many people are going past this idea of just supplying for my needs, and we begin accumulating excess, and we begin accumulating excess because we think that there's happiness in that. We think that Zig Ziglar, I think he said, money won't make you happy, but everyone wants to find out for themselves. So that's kind of that idea.
Really
we're all told money won't make us happy, but we all live like it will. And so rethinking that. But this is probably the piece that really got to me. Here in America, the statistics say that 80% of Americans have money-related stress. So 80% of Americans have anxiety about money. And this is despite being one of the wealthiest nations in the history of the world. Like, the problem isn't that there's not enough money. There's enough money. Most of us have. I've never missed a meal in my entire life. And not only have I not missed a meal, I've pretty much eaten anything I wanted to for, within reason for every meal. So it's not that we don't have enough money. It's that we're looking for things in money that aren't there, security and happiness. And we reach a certain amount and we find that we're not really that secure and we're not really that happy. And so we think more money is going to bring security and happiness, and it doesn't. So we're chasing more money. And this, I think, is where the anxiety comes in and the stress, and that I can never have enough of what doesn't provide that security and fulfillment and happiness that we think it's going to.
Makes complete sense to me, and I can see how we can end up in that situation where we're buying more stuff thinking there's more security and there's more happiness in those possessions, and then we have to buy a bigger house for those possessions to keep them in, or we have to go and rent storage or something like that, or something crazy like that. I recognize in your writing that there are many forms of clutter: spiritual clutter, emotional clutter, and mental clutter. Have you got any advice for how I could perhaps approach my own creativity to gain a greater sense of fulfillment?
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I have any, 3 or 4 step plans, the easy formulas that can be applied. Probably not in some of those areas. Here's what we found. And I would encourage anyone, I think that they would find this to be true, is for us, physical minimalism became a gateway to intentionality, I think is probably how I began saying it. So as we began removing all the things that we didn't need, 3 or 4 van loads of things to, local charities, we were forced to ask ourselves some pretty difficult questions. Like, why did we own 3 van loads of things that we didn't need to own? What was convincing us to buy those things? What lies were we believing? Were we thinking that they would provide happiness? We were trying to impress other people. We were just, following other people's expectations on us. Were we really buying into advertisements more than we thought we were? Like, what mistruths had we subscribed to that caused us to spend our money and energy on things that we didn't need? And so as we did that, and as we realized that our lives had become very unintentional, that we had just been swept along by society and swept along by people's expectations on us, or these mistruths that we had bought into, then that invited the door for us to start questioning other things. So began questioning our schedule. Like, are we doing things that are really the most beneficial to us, or are we just succumbing to people's expectations? Are we just doing things because everyone else is doing them, or because they're really the most important thing for us to be doing? And spiritually, what are the things that they were focusing on spiritually that's just we're doing it because everyone else is doing it, or we're doing it because it's really the most beneficial thing for our souls and for our hearts in that way. And so it caused us to question so many assumptions in so many different ways in relationships that we were, I think, just open to the idea that we needed adjustment in those places. And then we began finding the tools to help us incorporate that into our very specific lifestyle and very specific way of living.
I really like that term of adjustment, because it sounds like, it's something you do have control over, and it sounds like tweaking rather than kind of rash decisions and big clear outs and things like that. It's about tweaking things and starting to question things.
Yeah, and I think it's about knowing that it's a journey, knowing that my website became minimalist, it's becoming, it's a process, kids are growing and changing, and our lives change, and what I do for a living changed. So what I need to do those things is going to change, and it's all things in life that they were constantly watching, being wary of drift and just being very, very focused and intentional.
Yeah, that concept of it being a journey really resonates really, really well with me. I saw in your writings recently this concept of ownership is nothing and access is everything. I'd like to learn a little bit more about that concept of ownership is nothing and access is everything.
Even just going back to our last conversation where, we tend to look for security in money and in different things. And I've always thought that security is found in community. Security is found in relationships. And the thing is that when we begin pursuing ownership, we start working harder, we start working longer hours so that we can earn the money to go buy the house with the garden. We're misplacing our pursuits, and we're trying to own it when we don't need to. And we're giving up relationship with our neighbors, and we're giving up relationship with our family because we're trying to own these things that where most of them are already available to us if we would just slow down long enough to notice them and slow down long enough to enjoy the things that we already do have. We would stop, as I phrased it, stop pursuing ownership and start just enjoying the access that we already have, or that most of us have at least.
I love that idea of exchanging possessions for deeper relationships.
Yeah, and I think some, more of that would take place as minimalism continues to grow. I was asked one time as a interview, I think with a college student, and I had mentioned how, I forget what I was talking about, some gardening tool of some sort, how I didn't own one and I just borrowed it from my neighbor whenever I needed it because I didn't need it that often. And she was like, well, if everyone was minimalist, then who would you borrow it from? Yeah. And I just remember, thinking, what, if all of us were minimalist, we would probably be in a much tighter community. We would be in much tighter relationship because, if the whole block has to figure out, okay, who's going to buy the lawnmower and who's going to buy the shovel and who's going to buy the snowblower, and who's going to own this tool, that it would bring a community together as opposed to what we have now, at least in the suburbs, all these isolated boxes where everyone's trying to, survive in their own little kingdom and doesn't want to bother the neighbor to borrow something that, they have just lying in their garage that they would love to lend if someone would just ask them for it.
It's a really good point. And it always fascinates me when resources become limited, when you get a kind of event like an earthquake perhaps, or you get some like really heavy snow, how communities suddenly pull together.
Oh yeah, but they're great examples because then everyone looks back on fondness, and we talk about the strength of people, and we love how the community pulls together, and then everything gets back up and running, and we just pull our cars into our garages and go back to the way it was before.
What has been the most inspiring experience you've had in the last week?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a few things. I think the more we open our eyes, the more we can be inspired. And I'll say other people tend to inspire me. I'm working on being easily fascinated, a phrase I'm working on, just being easily fascinated by other people and what they're doing and what they're accomplishing. And my son plays soccer, and My son has a friend who's 11, and he's just he works real hard, and he's very disciplined at his craft of soccer. And not just at practices, but outside on his own, and you can just see his growth, and you can see how much he's maturing and getting better at the craft of soccer. And I'm like, here's an 11-year-old boy out there on the soccer field, and I'm watching his improvement, and I'm like, man, that could be me. Not in soccer, but anything I want to pursue. If I pursue it with passion and discipline, that I can grow in those ways. So even that small little soccer game of 11 and 12-year-old boys, I was inspired by Freddie is his name, and just seeing what he's becoming so quickly.
It's been a wonderful experience speaking with you and learning more about a simplicity mindset. I'd love to ask you what you're most grateful for.
I'm grateful for my family. Grateful for the people that are around me. I'm grateful for what I get to do, is probably how I should say it. Just thinking about my kids. My son's 12, and I was just thinking about it this morning. As he gets older, and what's he going to do, and what's his life going to be about. And I think that the goal is just that we get to do something that we love doing for a living. Yeah. And I'm living that right now, and I'm just very grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah. That's fabulous. And you love what you're doing right now. What are you working on right now, and where can I find out more about what you're working on and your work?
Yeah, good question. So becomingminimalist.com is the website, and I always send people there. That's where they can find the writing and all the updates on Twitter and on Facebook on both of those, and you can find those from the Becoming Minimalist website. So there's two big things that I'm working on, and I can't quite go public with either of them yet. One significant book project that I'm working on, and then something pretty exciting that I've been working on with my wife that I can't wait to talk about, but I'm nowhere near in a place where I can start explaining it quite yet.
Joshua, thank you so much for your time and helping me to better understand minimalism today.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. Thanks. I enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks for listening. Nothing beats the stories and advice of an expert to help you raise your creative game. I would love to know what you thought about today's episode, so don't forget to subscribe in iTunes, where you can rate and review the show. Your review is the best way for other people to find us. I might even give you a mention. If you like this episode, I invite you to share it on Facebook or Twitter with the one person you know who will benefit from the wisdom shared here today. You can find the show notes on inspirationalcreatives.com/podcast. If you have a burning question or a great idea for a guest, head on over to inspirationalcreatives.com/contact, where you can connect with me there. That's it for 2016. Thank you so much for your support and for listening to the podcast this year. I can't wait to connect with you in the new year. Happy New Year.